Affairs Forum of WZTV Fox 17. And now your host, Dr. James Haney.
Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the United Negro College Fund, and we're fortunate to have with us Dr. RMitchell, who is the academic dean at Fisk University. And Dr. Mitchell, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Haney. It's always a pleasure to come visit with you and be a part of comments.
Dr. Mitchell, you know, the topic today is the United Negro College Fund, and of course you've got a lot of information in reference to that. But let's talk about your background and education and some information that led you to your position as academic dean at Fisk University this morning before we get into the United Negro College Fund.
Thank you very much. I'm a native Nashvilleian, so this is very comfortable being here, and it's wonderful to be able to be at home. My education, I think, is a wonderful sort of example of what's available in Nashville, Tennessee, because I always tell people there's education from the cradle here in Nashville. I was educated in the Catholic and public schools of Nashville, graduating from Pearl High School, my alma mater. Then I'm a graduate of Fisk University. I did an undergraduate degree there in history with a minor in philosophy. And I received my master's degree at Tennessee State University. And by the time I received my master's degree in the early 70s, we were focusing on some areas. My focus area was in American history, and at that time, something we called Black Studies, which was a very popular area at the time. From Tennessee State, I did graduate work at Memphis State University, and leaving Nashville briefly to look at urban areas. And then I received my doctorate at Middle Tennessee State University. While at MTSU, my focus was American history as well as European studies. And I pursued a double minor in sociology and higher education. And just about 2 years ago, I had the good fortune of, even at the postdoctoral level studying higher education at Harvard University for a postdoctoral degree. So the education process between Nashville and what's available, I think, has been I found a real testimony to what can happen.
Now, in looking at your background, Dr. Mitchell, you said that you are a graduate of Fisk University. Let's talk about Fisk University, established in 1865, but let's look at the education that was available for African Americans prior to 1865, and have you, before you get to Fisk, to simply give our audience with the information that you have as an historian, to give our audience sort of an historical view of the situation of the African American. Well, you know, from his earliest background to the kind of information that you believe to deal with his education later on.
Well, as you well know, as we were discussing earlier, Dr. Haney and I have been colleagues for about 25 years now, discussing the teaching of history. The historical record of the African American experience with regard to education was one that was truly regional. Out of the South, those African Americans who were in regions outside of the South and free from slavery might have been free to seek an education if it were available. And in some of the New England states in the Atlantic region, that was the case. But from 1619, when slavery initiated here, to about 1690, it may have been possible to receive an education. But by the early 1700s, especially in the South, with insistence upon plantation slavery, education became a luxury that the slave owner felt could not be afforded the slave. Persons who are educated can communicate. And it's very difficult to enslave someone who can communicate. For as far as the slave owner was concerned, regardless of your view about the humanity of slavery, it was an economic system. And education would have removed the slave as an economic tool. And Southern slavery would have been impossible without the slave.
And so there's a fear in terms of education. Education has always meant something important, even in slavery. Is that what we're saying?
That's right. That's right. Education and the ability to communicate. So state after state, beginning in Virginia, eventually through Alabama, Mississippi, and finally in Tennessee, there were laws against educating the slave. So prior to the end of the Civil War, I always tell my students, prior to the Civil War, it was illegal to educate African Americans. You know, many people like to look at the statistics about the advancement of African American children versus white and Asian children in our school systems. But I like to point out that until about 140 years ago, it was illegal to educate me as an African American. Against the law. Against the law. So if I've made up the gap and you tell me the gap is 1.2 years or so many months, I'm really not worried. If we made up that much difference in that time, given all the advancements and whatever, education is a wonderful sort of thing and has come. So that was the position that the South found itself in. And as you well know, Tennessee was a unique sort of entity in the whole Civil War question, because Tennessee was the last state to leave the Union and the first state to rejoin the Union. And when Lincoln made Tennessee a laboratory for Reconstruction, sent his good friend Andrew Johnson to be military governor, one of the initial thrusts here was to provide for a population. Also Nashville, because of its location, a northern center, as the Union armies were sweeping south and slaves were free, they were put on the trains and sent to Nashville. So there was a large population, both slave and free, here in 1864-65. With the close of the war, one of the activities that was looked at was the providing of education, opening up a school, opening up a free school, because even prior to the opening of Fisk or the government's involvement, after the Civil War that was long illegal, we see people beginning to sell education. I think one of the sort of myths or gaps in history was the eagerness of African Americans for education. There were always some, without regard to the law, who did learn to read and write. It may have been dangerous for you if you were a slave to let people know you could read and write, but there was that desire. In Nashville, one very famous school was the Napier School, founded by J.C. Napier's father, who was actually selling education for a nickel. After the Civil War, the American Missionary Association and the Freedmen's Bureau, finally funded by Congress, decided to address two issues that faced the African American: health care and education. Sounds almost like today.
Let's talk about the Freedmen's Bureau connection in terms of education and health care. Let's elaborate upon that.
The Bureau, the job of the Freedmen's Bureau was to, throughout the South, abandoned land was gathered.